Hello and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Weekly Blitz. My name is Joel Moran. My co-host Jackson McIntyre is here with me tonight. And we have a special guest, Theo Ash, NFL, who's been on the show before, now making his second appearance. Theo, how you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me back.
There's a lot to talk about this week. A lot of historic performances that we have to dive into that honestly shattered brains. Jackson, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I just had to watch like 40-something dropbacks of Cooper Rush. So as good as I can be doing after that, I suppose.
So the format on these shows moving forward and how we've been doing them as recently, we just go through every single game. Some games will have more analysis than others because they were just better. To start it off, Lions versus Jaguars. The Lions beat the Jaguars 52-6. Theo, what were your main takeaways from this game?
My main takeaway is that the Lions melted our face off. I looked it up. They had a 71-yard average drive distance. That is the only game in the True Media database where the average drive travels over 70 yards, and that goes back to 2000. They scored 5 points every time they touched the ball and got an opportunity. So 5 points per drive, pretty ridiculous. That's the second best per drive mark since 2000. Only the 2007 Patriots had a better mark than that. So real face-melting offense. I feel like every single time the Lions touched the ball, it was a foot race. Like every time the announcers said anything, it was like, oh, a foot race, oh, a foot race, oh, a foot race. And the Jaguars were not winning any of those foot races, unfortunately.
I think the funniest part of that is Goff did not attempt a pass of over 20 yards in the entire game. Like he's just intermediate master. Like I don't know if I think his best trait is his ability to throw receivers into yards after the catch at the intermediate level. I don't know if there's anyone doing that at a higher level right now. Like Purdy was last year. Not so much this year for a number of reasons. Take your pick. But like no one does it like Goff. It's throwing away from leverage into space, 10 to 20 yards downfield on the money every time. He's just incredible at that.
He's so wide receiver friendly. I feel like Jameson Williams in this offense playing at this level is just a cheat code. Last year, he had 300 yards in 12 games. This year, he has 500 in like 7 or 8 games. And his explosiveness in his offense, I feel like has added a different dimension to it entirely. And especially when they use him as an intermediate threat and he's just not clearing out the field. He had a breakaway touchdown. And, man, the speed on this team is ridiculous. Do you guys feel like this is by far and away the best team in the NFL, or is there still a little bit inside you that you don't really trust the Lions too much because they have beaten up on some bad teams, but they're also undefeated against teams that are 500 and better?
I don't think they're far and away the best team in the league. I mean, I certainly think that they're beatable, maybe more than they seem right now. I mean, Houston, they won by 3. Green Bay, they won by 10. But I think that
Minnesota.
Bay game, Minnesota was a close game. Arizona was a one-score game. Tampa Bay was a one-score game that they came out on the wrong side of. The LA game went to overtime. I mean, they've killed Dallas, but Dallas is terrible. They killed Tennessee, but Tennessee is terrible. They killed Jacksonville with Mac Jones. Those teams are terrible. This team can get beat in the playoffs. Now, should they be the favorites to come out of the NFC? Probably. Still, they're the team to beat. Most certainly, they'll probably be the 1 seed, and that'll give them the best chance. I guess the Eagles are right on their heels, but I also don't know if I would say far and away. I think the Eagles would go in there and give them a game. I really do.
I think they would, and this is a new Eagles team right now. The defense they're playing right now is just incredible. We'll talk more about that later. But yeah, I've been like kind of wanting to enter the Bills into much more serious contender status the last couple of weeks, and this was like the cherry on top. I really like the Amari Cooper edition. I'll get into that later too, but I do think the Bills are a team that obviously that'd be in the Super Bowl, but in the NFC, Eagles are probably the one to give them a real run.
We can stay on that topic with the Chiefs and the Bills and talking about the Bills because I agree with you. I feel like the Bills might be the best team in the AFC. I know the Chiefs just went on this like 15-game win streak and they were like invincible for so long. They always find these ways to win, but last year I felt much better about them, funny enough, because this year, 9 of their wins, 7 of them have been by 1 score. The secondary is not as locked down as it was last year, especially after losing Jalen Watson, I believe it was. And then the left tackle situation is like the worst left tackle situation in the league. It finally came back to bite them against the Bills, but this has been a problem. Even last week against the Broncos, like Patrick Mahomes was uncomfortable in the pocket the entire day. And I just feel like one of these issues is going to come back to haunt the Chiefs, and just not having the right left tackle play, just not having the right reinforcements in the secondary. That's kind of how I view the Chiefs, and the Bills to me feel like the most complete team in the AFC.
Yeah, and one more thing to the Lions real quick I wanted to mention was Zadarius Smith had a really good game, and he had a 28.6% win rate in true pass sets. They need that. They need that to be consistent. And I mean, he's not going to be Hutchinson, but they need someone who can win with some sort of reliability.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, the pass rush is the thing that concerns me the most. But with Aleem McNeil is an absolute monster, like truly one of the best defensive tackles in the league. So to have him and Zadarius, like if they can continue to put up 30 plus in the playoffs, like I do think that this defense can pull them through. They can win a Super Bowl with this defense, but it would take the offense not regressing in the playoffs. It would take Goff not regressing in the playoffs.
An interesting question is the Lions, if they make the Super Bowl, do you feel more comfortable about their chances to win it all if they face the Chiefs or if they face the Bills?
Man, it's tough to say. I think the Chiefs do such a good job with their consistency, and even in this Bills game, they seem to have a little bit more like early down consistency in terms of their success rate. Like they just so reliably pick up 7 of the yards that they need on first and second down, and then it's 3rd and 3, and they have the highest 3rd down like conversion rate in the league. So it's so unsexy that it's easy to kind of write off the Chiefs or get worried about the Chiefs and wonder where the big plays are. But I do still believe in that consistency that they've got, and obviously the fact that they're just the Chiefs. But the Bills, we saw it in that game, like the Bills came up with the big plays and kind of outshot them a little bit. So I don't know. I think I'm still on Team Chiefs until they prove otherwise, though. I think about betting against the Patriots when they were at the peak of their powers, and like it was just not a good idea to do that. And I feel like if you just say Chiefs more times than not, you'll be right. So I'll go with them still, that they're the team to beat.
Yeah, that's the easy one because we haven't been proved wrong yet. And I mean, like the question is Mahomes, like what Mahomes are we getting? Is this regression we've seen this season, is this going to stick in the playoffs? The answer historically has been no, but he has been playing much lower quality football than we're used to from him in basically all phases of the game. And he has less weapons now. Rice is out. Worthy is not. He did have maybe his best game this week, and we'll see if that continues trending up. But I think the question is just like, where's Mahomes at when we get there? Is he playing like he has in the past, or is this regular season Mahomes what we're seeing in the Super Bowl? So we're going into it.
Yeah, I can't count out Mahomes at all. I can't.
Yeah. We shouldn't.
Theo, what did you want to add on?
The thing I'm most concerned about with the Chiefs, though, is the defense, which you brought up earlier. It is not as strong as it was last year, not even close. Last year, they were allowing 1.51 points per drive. That's a 90th percentile mark over the last 2 years. This year, it's at 1.97. That's a 44th percentile mark. Their drive distance is 2 yards longer this year. Percentile wise, it went from 84th percentile last year to 57th percentile this year. So they are giving up longer drives, more points per drive. Like that's last year, the defense was so locked down and such a big part in them winning the Super Bowl. Like if that takes a step back, and it has, like maybe it should be the Bills, but I don't know, man. I'm just going to say Chiefs automatically. Like I thought about it with the Super Bowl last year, like, oh man, the 49ers have just done such a great job. And then the 49ers are a lot like the Lions, where like when you talk about how good they are, the first thing you talk about is Ben Johnson. You talk about the scheme. You talk about the yak, the in cuts. Like if the Chiefs played the Lions, like would it go the same way of as a Chiefs 49ers Super Bowl? Like I really think that it could.
And this year, what's weird about the Chiefs is that they've actually been elite against running back runs. That's been the strength of their defense, just their run defense, and their secondary hasn't been quite as good. L'Jarius Sneed, I don't think has been a good signing for the Titans, but the Chiefs miss him bad because I don't think we fully appreciated just how much he allowed them to do defensively. And he allowed Spags to toy with the personnel because you had Trent McDuffie blitz a lot from the nickel spot. And now McDuffie is stuck to the boundary because he has to be the true lockdown corner, and you kind of lose that element. Najee Johnson has been a disaster for the Chiefs. Like, he's the guy that they're picking on a lot, and he has not been winning his matchups.
Yeah. Yeah, Amari Cooper ate him alive.
Did you see that the Chiefs signed Tyquan Thornton?
Nope.
They signed Tyquan Thornton. And somebody tweeted that he's going to catch a touchdown from the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, from Mahomes in the Super Bowl. Maybe that'll give them some explosive plays, though, because right now it's at 8%, which is like the lowest of any Andy Reid team in like the last 20 years. They're just slow. Like Hopkins is still like okay, but he's not what he once was, and Kelsey has noticeably lost a step. Maybe Xavier Worthy breaks out in a similar fashion that Rashee Rice did last year. Theo, I know you had a tweet about just undersized wide receivers and Xavier Worthy. Have you been underwhelmed by him this year?
Yeah, I think that. I mean, I haven't been too underwhelmed just because I didn't have like a first round grade on him. I was a little bit overwhelmed when he got selected as high as he did. I was like, whoa, that's high for a guy who can't really get off press and who just is a bit small for yak and things like that. And I think that my concerns with him have pretty much come true. Like, yeah, he does hit the ground when he gets pressed. Like, he hasn't played the ball on the sideline like as good as you'd like. But I do think he's in a bit over his head to begin this year. I mean, they were supposed to have Hollywood Brown. They were supposed to have Rashee Rice. They were supposed to have Isaiah Pacheco. They don't have any of those things. So there's been so much pressure on Worthy to be like that guy in this Chiefs offense in a way that when they drafted him, he just wasn't supposed to be. And I think as he gets more comfortable and as they get Pacheco back and maybe as they get Hollywood Brown back and DeAndre Hopkins continues to assimilate, like I really can see this receiving core and Worthy locking in over the. I mean, we still got a long way to go in this regular season. We still got 2 months, so I can see. I have been a little bit underwhelmed with Worthy, but and the Chiefs' weapons in general, but I still think that there's meat on the bone for them to get better. It's not a total disaster.
Anything you want to add on to that, Jackson?
Yeah, I think that there is some, like, I think the hope for this offense, right, is for the weapons at least, is Hopkins getting more up to speed and being a bit more of a weapon in the system, and then Worthy just progressing. I think that even with some growth or some more, with Hopkins coming along a little bit further, I think there's still a gap from that player and what Rashee Rice was for them last year in the playoffs. So that's where I'm like, if they're now Worthy can make up for that, if he really does become this, like, taking the top off the defense and hit some big shots in the playoffs, that would certainly overcome that gap in value from Rice and Hopkins. But I mean, there's a lot up in the air and a lot that we've yet to see. So
the Chargers and Bengals game, I thought it symbolized a mantle being passed from Herbert to Joe Burrow. Now you have my shitty situation that I've had for years now. I love the Chargers and what they're doing. Xavier Worthy drafted over Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey, like one of the 5 best rookie wide receivers right now.
Stud.
I think the Chargers are pretty dangerous, even though they choked. I felt like the fact that they didn't choke all the way and they still found a way to win that game. The Brandon Staley Chargers don't win that. I feel like they lose by a touchdown or two. I'm buying this Chargers team. I really am. With Jim Harbaugh, the energy, the defense is flying around. I really love the Chargers, and as for the Bengals, I feel like they've wasted their three best players' best seasons. Jamar Chase, Burrow, and Hendrickson. They've all been fantastic, and they're 4-7. But you look at the way they've lost; it's all been one-score games. Like they've been right there. It's just a ball has bounced the other way. They don't win, and it is what it is. But this was the best game of this slate, in my opinion. I don't know about you guys.
I've got a lot to say here. Theo, you can go first.
I don't have too much to say, honestly. I think it's crazy that what you just mentioned, their three best players having the best years of their careers. I mean, if they had a winning record, that might be your MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, and Offensive Player of the Year. Like, seriously, Hendrickson leads the league in pressures, sacks. Like, he has been a monster. Chase is, I think, your clear favorite for Offensive Player of the Year right now after the past couple weeks that he's had. Just the fact that they continue to fall short. And I think so much of it has to do with just athleticism on the defensive side of the ball. It's such a slow, just meandering unit that really can't contain anybody. Cam Taylor-Britt, he has his moments, but how many times does he just get like blown by and can't catch up this year? Lamar Jackson just has a field day against these linemen because they can't touch him. Like they can't bring him down. Against the Steelers, they're running the exact same stuff that Anarumo is. Like, on the play that Lamar escaped around the edge and then cut back inside and went down on the 1 yard line against the Bengals on Thursday night, I saw that exact same pass rush path when the Steelers did it. He didn't think about trying to escape around Ogunjobi's shoulder. Like he stepped up into pressure and delivered incomplete, right? So the Bengals just don't have the athletes to corral these elite quarterbacks making big time throws outside the numbers or running around or doing anything. It's easy mode. It's a rookie mode for these big time quarterbacks. And there are so many in the AFC. And yeah, it's just unfortunate for the Bengals that they've built this out this way because man, when they're on, they're the most enjoyable team to watch on offense. Like Chase is just so sick. Burrow throws such a beautiful catchable ball all the time, and none of it matters because of the defense and the lack of athleticism on it. And that's basically just where I'm at with this team.
Yeah. Speaking of big time throws, Burrow and Herbert were tied for the second most of the week, both at 4. They were also number 1 and 2 this week in ADOT, 14.8 for Herbert, 11.9 for Burrow. So they were just slinging it, as we all saw. I think that a big reason that the Bengals have so many close losses is their defense is just not in sync ever. So for Herbert's first touchdown, it was a cover 3 against 2 inline tight ends to the boundary. And the boundary hook curl linebacker just did not carry 2. He's completely lost. And Herbert just throws an absolute dot in for the touchdown. The second touchdown is a deep crosser from Johnston, where it was a cover 3 again, and the back end just completely busts an exchange, and he's wide open. Another touchdown. And they go up early. These type of coverage busts have been going on all season for them. Players are just running open downfield up the seams. They can't stop the run. Last week, I mentioned that the Cardinals, who have a similar talent level on defense to what the Bengals have, there's not a very big talent gap there, but the Cardinals have like a scheme floor where the floor for that defense is their scheme. They have a solid scheme that there's a lot of quarters. There's a lot of just even though the talent's not there, they play like they know what they're doing. They make exchanges, they communicate, things get passed off. Leverage is typically in their favor. Whereas with the Bengals, it's the complete opposite. And the floor for the Bengals defense is their talent, unfortunately, which is, even though it's similar to the Cardinals, it's much lower than a scheme floor if you have a good scheme. We kind of saw that with like Brian Flores last year with the Vikings, where the talent sucked. The defense wasn't that good, but it was average badish, but that was only because of Brian Flores' scheme. The floor for that defense was the scheme, not the talent. And when you're stuck in a situation like that, good luck. You're going to be it's big plays all game. Despite the fact that the Bengals receivers were running deep all game, wide open. By the way, this was the big test for the Chargers defense, and they kind of failed it, kind of miserably. There were multiple missed opportunities. I think the last time they played an actual offense was the Chiefs in Week 4. So it's been a while. They've been beating up on bad teams, and I mean, there was Chase down the sideline that was missed by a hair. There was Burton early in the game who kind of just misjudged the ball in the air, and I think he probably could have run under that, especially after watching that on the All-22. He had some room. It was a good ball. If those plays are hit, like, well, obviously the T. Higgins one, all the ones that were capitalized on, these would have stacked on top of that. And like, it's scary if you're the Chargers secondary right now. That was not what you wanted to see when you're going up against better talent. So like both teams, I think, kind of got exposed. Both teams tried to lose it. All the missed field goals from the Bengals. There was the drop pick six that Justin Herbert could and probably should have thrown. Maybe it wasn't a pick six, but interception regardless. And then one thing I saw was Bud Dupree out there. I did not know he still played, but he's never been good, let alone in 2024. My God, like that was shocking to me. But yeah, J.K. Dobbins was phenomenal. Second highest RBIS score this week, 9.6, 6.3 yards after contact, negative 1.2 yards before contact, before contact, and then a 0.27 missed tackles per attempt, forced missed tackles per attempt. So, yeah, a lot going on for the Chargers, a lot going on for the Bengals. I don't know if it's a great look for either team in the long run.
Is this a tale between two halves for the Chargers defense? Because in the first half, they were solid. And in the second half, things kind of collapsed for them. Or do you feel like those things were available in the first half as well?
I feel like they were there the whole game. Yeah. Yeah. Even if, no, it was bad all game, I think.
I mean, they marched down there in the first half. The Chargers have done a good job keeping everything in front of them and limiting scoring really the whole year. Like down in the red zone, they've been pretty elite. They call so much quarters. I thought when Minter was named the DC there, we were going to see like a real blitz heavy, like disguise heavy Chargers defense. And really it's the total opposite. They just kind of pop out into their zones and it's very just eyes on the quarterback. I think pretty easy to decipher, but you know, they just keep everything in front of them and just come downhill and they stop you from scoring. And in the first half, that kind of worked. But in the second half, like when it's quarters, the corners are in man and they just don't have they just didn't have the corners to keep up with Chase and Higgins and Burrow. And it really showed.
Higgins was special yesterday.
Higgins is having an insane year. I feel like, I don't know if he'll
future Charger.
Hey, that would be cool. He almost strikes me as someone who could maybe regress a little bit after he gets paid after this year. Not that because he's always been crazy, so I don't think he'll regress too much. But every single time he catches the ball this year, he is so maximum effort with the ball in his hands. He like breaks like 5 tackles. It's like there is no way once you get paid your $1 trillion or whatever it is that you continue to break tackles and like stay on your feet at this rate after getting the ball. But I feel like he's been an absolute joy to watch this season because he has like unprecedented amounts of dog in him this year.
His arms are so long.
He never brings the ball back to his chest either. He's just like waving it around.
Yeah.
Nah, he's been awesome. I think people haven't talked about him much just because he's been unhealthy. But I felt his presence missed. I benched him this week in fantasy, unfortunately. He had like 29 points. I was seeing this stat circulating on Twitter with Joe Burrow, 27 touchdowns, 5 interceptions on the season. Players to achieve 3,000 plus passing yards, 27 plus touchdowns, and 5 or fewer interceptions through the first 11 games, along with their team's final record. The Patriots, Tom Brady in 2007 and 2015, 16-0 and 13-3. Aaron Rodgers in 2011 and 2020, 15-1 and 13-3. Patrick Mahomes in 2020, 14-2. Drew Brees in 2018, 13-3. Now add Joe Burrow to the list, 4-7.
Welcome, Joe Burrow, to the list.
What do you think about the conversation about like people just saying, yeah, Joe Burrow played well, but I mean, he wasn't perfect and that's why they lost?
That's the people that say QB is that winning is a QB stat. Like there's not a bunch of other inputs to it. Sorry, Theo, go ahead.
I completely agree. I mean, he did miss that throw to Chase and Herbert even almost threw that pick six. Like both of these guys kind of did cool at points towards the end of the game, especially Herbert. But, you know, for these quarterbacks to win anything, they have to sustain such a high level of play. And when like there are the amount of drops that there are, and the offensive line is under the pressure that it's under, it's just almost impossible for any human being who can like process things at a human being level instead of at a computer level to actually play at the level that Twitter wants them to over the course of a season or even over the course of a game. Like it's just difficult. I don't know if anybody else does a better job. I think both of those guys could not be more elite, really.
Yeah. I think they're in the top 5 undisputedly. I think it's Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, Burrow, Herbert. The top 3 is pretty solidified, and then I think the 4 and 5 you can interchange however you want. Ravens and Steelers. The Steelers won 18-16. How did you guys feel about this one? Because there's some mixed reviews. Some people say Steelers really showed out, a statement win. You could also look at the other side of the coin and like, oh, the Ravens had a lot of things not go their way. I mean, first drive of the game, Derrick Henry fumbles for the first time in like 400 plus touches. It just kind of felt like, oh yeah, this is going to be one of those games for the Ravens as soon as it started.
It's always one of those games against the Steelers. I mean, Lamar has 5 touchdowns and 11 turnovers in his career against the Steelers. They just have his number.
Yeah. I think their defense performed. Lamar struggled with accuracy a bit this game. He had an 11.1 ADOT, yet 0 big-time throws on 36 dropbacks. He was pressured on 14 of those 36 dropbacks and was 4 for 12 for 33 yards under pressure. There was obviously that Peyton Wilson pick maybe of the year where he just completely ripped it away from Justice Hill, who should have held on, slightly underthrown, but it was there. He should have held on to that. And just a spectacular play. I mean, Russell Wilson wasn't very good himself. He was shaky, horrendous interception in the end zone there. Like, God.
Dude, I laughed so loud when that panned because it was such a vintage Russ play. I'm like, I have my hands in my head, like, no way.
Yeah.
And the camera pans and it's just Marlon Humphrey in the back of that zone. Yeah. I had to let out. I just had to laugh.
Yeah. Patrick Queen had his best game of the season. That forced fumble right before the half was insane. That was a really, really sick strip. Yeah. Joey Porter was excellent as usual in coverage. I think that it was just a case where the defense had a good game plan for Lamar. Lamar's accuracy was not what it has been this season, and he didn't play up to par for where he's been at this year.
Yeah, I think the Steelers, I love the Steelers, man. I hope the Steelers go to the Super Bowl in the AFC. I think so many people on social media just want to discount them because they're not built the way that the offensive meta should be. All right. They've got that amphibian, they've got that like ancient reptile build, that crocodile build that lasts a million years when the dinosaurs die and the pterodactyl build dies out. Right. It's just Tomlin like scraping through with just discipline is what I feel like it is. Like they played Jayden Daniels last week. He doesn't scramble the entire game, right? Like finally somebody contains him in the pocket. They play Lamar this week. Lamar, for the first time all year, had a negative EPA on throws where he holds it more than 3 seconds. Usually that's where he kills teams. He's able to create. He's able to scramble around. Just no can do against the Steelers. They've got too many good players in their front four. TJ Watt, Hayward. The Steelers lead the league in batted balls at the line of scrimmage, and you can really feel that every single week. They get like 2 or 3, right? And they kill drives. It's just cool. It's just, I have so much respect for it. Special teams, they always outplay you. They've got the crazy crowd advantage, which at home you should expect, but even in road games, right? The fans filled the stadium, especially in Washington last week. All these little details just add and add and add and add. And then when they win, people are, it's just a fluke because Russell Wilson had a bad game and they still won somehow. They're like, how did they give away with it? Like, how could this possibly be happening? It's a million little things that they just do right. And it's funny because at the same time, they've also like done some things wrong this year and with some of their personnel decisions. And I get being frustrated with Tomlin at points, but just overall, he He knows what he's doing, and I think he's going to get his first ever Coach of the Year this season.
He always gets the last laugh.
Mm-hmm.
It's insane that he has no Coach of the Years.
Yeah, I know. It's just people just take it for granted. They take his style for granted. Everything about the Steelers, people just take it for granted because they don't have the quarterback. And I don't know how it'll go when they go to the playoffs. Like maybe they draw some insanely hard matchup game one, and they lose. Like I could see it happening, but to go from Kenny Pickett to Russ is such an upgrade that like you cannot count the Steelers out as like their typical one and done playoff exit like they've been since that like Jacksonville game back in 2017 is the last time I remember them being past the first round.
Yeah, there's a slump going on right now with playoff wins, with Russell Wilson and the offense struggling against the Ravens. Do you think it was more of the Ravens defense finally figuring things out on that end? Because all season long, they have been kind of bad on defense. DVOA is very kind to them because they have been facing some top-level offenses. But in this game specifically, like, do you think we could see some more of what we saw last year from the Ravens defense? Not quite as elite, but at least a unit that is above average.
You go ahead.
No, you go.
I was going to say that I think that kind of like what Theo was mentioning, where they're kind of like this crocodile offense or team build where they just run the ball down your throat all game and smash mouth. And the Ravens have really struggled with big passing plays and just a leaky secondary. And Pittsburgh's not really the team to take advantage of that. They'll hit their deep shots. They had that deep ball to Pickens down the left sideline. But they're not really that team to just all game long like dice you up for 25, 20-yard chunk gains like the Lions do all game long. And I think that kind of approach masked the Ravens' issues this week. I think the issues are still there. We'll still see them. But I think it's a lot easier. It's easier and kind of harder at the same time because you have to be more physical and like approach the team differently for that smash mouth Najee Harris gut punch up the middle offense that the Steelers play. But that's kind of my takeaway.
I think on George Pickens' targets, the EPA for the offense was +5, and then on every other play it was -21. And that is my concern with the Steelers. As much as I love that they're winning games this way, there is some reason to be concerned that there's basically one guy that is effective on this entire offense.
It's George Pickens or nothing.
Pretty much.
Commanders versus Eagles. I feel like this was the Eagles' kind of wake-up party to everybody, just putting them on notice that, hey, listen, even though there was a lot of backlash towards us in the beginning of the season, we lost to the Falcons in heartbreaking fashion, we're still an elite team. And I think right now, as great as the offensive talent is, it's being led by this defense. This has been one of the best one-year turnarounds for defense that we've seen in recent memory, especially for the Eagles. It's like everything they needed, they got. And I feel like it was fair to project the secondary being better because they drafted DeJean and Quinion. But, I mean, who the hell thought that Zach Bond was going to be one of the best linebackers in the league converting as an edge rusher? I mean, the Eagles have just found a way to get it done on defense. And I think Jalen Carter, when he is on, because he can be inconsistent at times, he is one of the very best defensive tackles in the league. And if the Eagles defense is going to keep playing like this, I think they do have a real shot against Detroit.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, they're pretty great. Jalen Carter has been on the field 81% of snaps last year or 81% of snaps this year as opposed to 51% last year. Obviously out of the draft, like conditioning was a big question for him. It cost him Defensive Rookie of the Year last year, I'd say. Like this year to find that consistency, it's been great. And Fangio, man, the Fangio defense is back and better than ever. Miami didn't like him for whatever reason. Like the players kind of kicked him out the door and didn't really like the system, I guess. But he has found a home back in Philadelphia. That too high shell that they run with with Blankenship having a great year and CJ Gardner-Johnson just put such a great cap on everything. They are the only team allowing an explosive play rate of less than 7% in the league this year. Or I was looking at their defense. I think I was actually looking at since September because they get off to a bit of a slow start. But recently, they've just allowed nothing big through the air. The average drive against the team since September only goes 19 yards, and then it's over. They pick up 1 point per drive, opponents do. So, yeah, it's just extremely tough. It's a defense that I find very beautiful to watch, all the different quarters and zones, and everybody understands where their help is. And like Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean are having a great year. And I think it's important to note, like, they're not exactly just playing cover one and chasing guys around and having like a lockdown year that way, like Stephon Gilmore when he won his accolade for Defensive Player of the Year. Like, that's not the system that these rookies are playing in. They're playing at a Rookie of the Year level, passing things off and walling things off and as a cloud corner, like jamming at the line of scrimmage before letting it off to the safety. And when Quinion gets an opportunity to jam, he like is trying to kill the opposing wide receiver. Like, he's just full sending it. So everybody has their like little niche role in this defense, and they all play it so well and understand it so well. And that combined with Saquon, combined with AJ Brown, combined with Jalen Hurts on the offensive side of the ball, like I think their defense is more built for the playoffs than Detroit's is.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I spent like the first 3-4 weeks of the year here with Joel, telling him, hey, just be patient. Like, after these big busts, like the coverage busts against the Packers early in the year, and that continued for on and off for a while. But I mean, they're here now, and there's a lot of communication. It's a pretty complex pattern recognition, like zone matching defense, where there's a lot of just playing on a string with the linebackers. And we're seeing that now with Dean and Bond, where that's like the glue is underneath. They're so fast, and they drop into their zones. They're fluid. They have that sixth sense with each other. They know like what the others are doing, regardless if they're looking at them or not. And like the way they exchange routes and the way that they can just drop into space and take away those like digs and crossers, it's fun to watch, and it makes things easier on the back end for everyone else who, as you mentioned, it's everyone's balling on that defense now. Like, we're in a time where like earlier in the year, Josh Sweat, everyone was like, why is his win rate so low? He just had a 28.6% pass rush win rate this week, and Milton Williams had a 25% pass rush win rate, both against true pass sets. Like, the pass rush is going now. Jalen Carter, obviously, like it's not an inconsistent thing where like a couple guys are playing well and then there's this big bust against cover 3 where the deep over is not matched. Like this, they're consistent now, and that's the talent has been there and the consistency had not. But if that remains, which it probably will, because it looks like really this was just a learning the scheme thing now. But this is a scary team, and Jalen Hurts has stepped it up too. Crazy stat. Saquon Barkley, 26 carries, 3.7 yards before contact this week, which the mean for that is about 1.9, or it was last year. The mean was 1.9, 3.7 on 26, massive sample size. I mean, like all of like Dickerson, Mailata, Jurgens, Johnson, they're opening gaping holes, like massive hole. It's an insane tape watch. There's zero gap integrity from Washington's defensive line. It's like when you watch like Alabama play like Incarnate Ward or something. You just see like these guys who use this massive athleticism disadvantage, and bodies are just moved every snap. They're getting to the second level after knocking him out of the A gap, and the right guard's climbing, getting hands on the linebacker, moving him 3 yards down the field. And Saquon's just like the best back in the league in space. Maybe Gibbs is approaching that too now, but like one of them. And so he's the perfect scheme fit, the perfect fit for that team, and everything just feels like it's clicking right now. And the vibes are immaculate right now in Philly for sure.
Like both Saquon Barkley touchdown runs, he went untouched past the line. I mean, the offensive line blocked so well. Cam Jurgens, he was awesome to watch. He was just like bulldozing defensive backs from Washington. I like what you mentioned, Theo, about just like everybody playing a niche role, and that's how the defense has been thriving. We get these Twitter posts like Quinyon and Darrelle Revis graphic of like how it's like
Yeah, it's not the same.
yeah, he's holding these receivers, and if you watch the tape on it, man, this is how you know Terry McLaurin is an elite wide receiver. It's the way they were bracketing him the entire game. It was like multiple people having eyes on him, making sure that he has no ounce of space. And yeah, there were reps, maybe 2 to 3, where Quinyon is like one-on-one with Terry McLaurin. He's pressing him, right? But like for the most part, they were bracketing stuff, and they always had a safety over the top, taking away routes that Terry McLaurin run down the field. And that ended up coming back to bite Jayden Daniels, because his first interception of the game was Reed Blankenship carrying a post that Jayden thought he was going to carry. And then he threw it, and then he's like, oh shit, he didn't carry it. And he basically just baited me. And that's how he got his first interception. Well, he threw his first interception of the game. It's just everybody is doing a role. They're playing a role, and Quinyon is playing a role, but that doesn't make it any more impactful than what Cooper DeJean is doing or what Zach Bond is doing. Like they're all a cohesive unit right now, and they're playing at a really high level together.
Yeah, it's the nice thing about the quarters defense is it gives you so many sets of eyes that are just back, and then from there it's such a piece of clay where you can set your brackets kind of however you want, because everybody is so far away from the quarterback and they have vision on absolutely everything. So it's so easy to build those brackets. And yeah, it was pretty hilarious, the treatment they were giving Terry McLaurin. I mean, on their red zone stand when they ended up scoring, and making it kind of a one possession game there at the very end, they were damn near giving McLaurin the Calvin Johnson treatment. Like it's kind of rare that you see just straight up the corner and the safety, like directly in front of them, like both looking at him. But they were throwing him those types of looks, and that opened up the one-on-one somewhere else. As far as Jade, or go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. You go.
I was going to talk about Jayden Daniels for a second. I think he might still be dealing with the ribs a little bit. I thought that he underthrew a lot of balls. There was that one really bad crosser that he threw. The pick was a bit underthrown. There was one that his wide receiver still should have caught, but he was rolling out to his right, I think. There was like a box zone coverage that he threw right in the middle of it, and that one kind of died, and the wide receiver had to pick it up off the turf, and it ended up getting ruled incomplete. I feel like these underthrows he might be kind of wincing as he kind of goes to unload some of these bigger throws. And I don't know, just a theory. He has not been nearly as accurate since he hurt his ribs versus Carolina.
It's the same thing against the Bears, against the Steelers. The ball kind of is dying on him a little bit when he's throwing past the sticks. And I feel like that's the big thing with him, that he's just dealing with an injury. And apparently he's not Offensive Rookie of the Year front runner anymore, because we have somebody new in apparently.
Apparently.
Yeah. How about a 3.8 ADOT for Jayden Daniels this week?
Wow.
Not good. Everything was, this whole year, like things are so clustered underneath to the right. I wonder why. I guess just as a right-handed quarterback, it's kind of easier for you to open up that way. And Cliff has dialed up so many underneath shots. That's just why. But in this game especially, that was another one where I kind of rolled my eyes at like the Quinion Mitchell, Darrelle Revis comparisons, just because like truly, like there was no chance the ball was going over there on a lot of those plays. But
in the Fangio defense, the outside corners really only taking something one-on-one truly like that if it's an outside release go ball. Like if it's not an outside release go ball, he's probably not one-on-one. And if he's vertical and comes back, he'll be one-on-one on that too. But like if it's vertical outside release, he's man. Anything else, he's going to have help on some type of cut with so he'll be an advantageous leverage for anything else.
I think with the Commanders, what we're seeing is just, I mean, all year long, they haven't been an explosive play offense. They've kind of just dinked and dunked their way down the field, and maybe occasionally they'll get like a big play. But really, this is one of the least explosive offenses in the NFL. And from what I was watching when they went up against the Eagles defense, Philadelphia just suffocated everything. Like there was nowhere to go with a lot of these plays with Jayden Daniels. And like he did have some throws that, you know, he would like back, but for the most part, I came away from that game like I don't know what Jayden was supposed to do on a lot of these plays.
Yeah, it was pretty soft. And Cliff Kingsbury, every year we see it. I mean, he collapses. they catch up to the tempo offense. He always has kind of these smaller running quarterbacks that get banged up. I mean, Kyler was never healthy in the second half of years. I honestly think that's the biggest part of it, more than like people catching on to the scheme. Maybe is it's just like his quarterback's always hurt in the second half of the year. I don't know how it went at Tech, but I mean, well, I do know that how it went at Tech. They always collapsed in the second half. I don't know if his quarterbacks are injured or not, but
it's like those Ben Simmons or Russell Westbrook cycles where it's like off season, the pictures start coming and then the hype starts, and then the season comes and then he's hurt and doesn't play until
the Packers and Bears. Speaking about another rookie quarterback, Thomas Brown, OC debut. I mean, DJ Moore getting screens, getting a touch out the backfield. I mean, this is something we haven't seen all year long from the Bears offense.
We've been seeing screens from them, but we haven't seen screens with like blockers out in front of DJ Moore. That was the new part. I don't know how many times I've watched DJ Moore catch a screen and nobody in front of him blocks. Like he's literally just supposed to make three people miss, and that's like the play. It's like, okay. But yeah, it was a very different story this week.
Caleb was good, and hopefully this is the Bears offense we're going to get moving forward. Theo, do you feel a little bit concerned about the Packers defense?
I was crashing out this was one of the least enjoyable Packers wins for me in a long time, just because I was freaking out about the defense the entire game. Yeah, man, it's pathetic. Kenny Clark hasn't had a pressure in like 3 games. Rashawn Gary beat a tackle for a sack for the first time all year. In this one, it happened in that final drive for Caleb. And then immediately after that, they had another great chance to sack Caleb, and Caleb just like ducked under our defender and like took off and ripped the hearts out of everybody. So yeah, they can't get any pressure on the quarterback. They haven't all year. They don't have a single person who can win. Hafley has timed up some blitzes pretty well, and they've gotten some really game-changing plays off of those. So shout out Hafley, but they can't win a Super Bowl like this. You need some sort of first-team All-Pro, Hall of Fame caliber defender to win a Super Bowl. The Chiefs have Chris Jones. The Patriots, when they were a dynasty, so many people filed in and out of there. Like when the Eagles won with a backup quarterback, it's because they had Fletcher Cox and they had, just big time Graham and just big time names.
Changers.
The Packers don't have anybody remotely close to that outside of Jair, who's been constantly banged up the past several years. Like maybe if he's healthy, he could go on a run where he looks like prime Jair, but we just haven't seen that in such a long time that I'm not really banking on it. So they
question for you, Theo.
They just don't have the talent. Yes.
Are you labeling Lucas Van Ness a bust yet?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, he's got the one move, and when they picked him, I just fell to my knees because I wanted JSN so bad, and he's just a one trick pony. And coming out of school, I remember him being this movable inside out chess piece, right? Like he labeled himself the smallest defensive tackle in the Big Ten. And now he's just in that 4-3 rushing off the edge, like bull rush, that doesn't get anywhere.
Yep.
There's just no pressure whatsoever. Wyatt hasn't lived up to expectations. Like no one is good. Quay Walker's not good. They've invested like several countries' GDP in front seven players in terms of investments. Like they have every single year, it's some RAS front seven player, and they have nothing to show for it. Less than nothing. I think they're one of the worst 4-man pass rushes in the league. They absolutely need to blitz. Yeah. I like Jordan Love a lot. We talked about it last time. I thought Jordan Love had a pretty great performance against the Bears outside of his one inexcusable pick, which is an inexcusable pick, which happens every week.
Outside of the pick, he's amazing.
He was amazing outside of that play, I thought. But, shout out Christian Watson. Shout out Josh Jacobs. Shout out Tucker Kraft. Like, I'm still excited about this offense. I still think the best might be yet to come for that unit, but I just don't think they can overcome what has been an atrocious defensive performance this year, just soft. So
yeah,
I don't think they can really make much noise because of that.
If the Bears offensive line is picking up stunts, like with consistency, you got to start worrying about that defensive line, because I've not seen them do that whatsoever this year at all.
No.
But I mean, their offense was actually playing with some like some awareness of space, which is like, I think back to that play last week where Caleb is like a design rollout to the left and he's got like this shallow hitch and then he's got an out running into outside leverage, like as his only two options, and he just falls down.
Dude, or how many times last week was Keenan Allen running a deep over route trying to run away from man coverage? It's like, bro, you got Keenan Allen doing this. Like, why not have DJ Moore do it, or Odunze, or anyone else but Keenan Allen? Like anyone.
There's been no thought to anything. Numbers never make sense. They're running into spots where they're outnumbered. They're throwing into their like RPO plays are being bounced outside to numbers again. Like there was that fourth down call a couple games ago where they I think it was 3 games ago where they gave it to Swift on the outside and pitched it into a spot where they had like 2 blockers and like 4 defenders out there. I mean, it made more sense. They were actually running away from leverage instead of into it with some consistency. There were still some questionable calls, but for the most part, it looked a lot better. Caleb was more accurate. Again, there was still a lot of places he could have been more accurate. There was that really nice ball early in the first quarter to Cole Kmet where he's in the soft spot of the cover 3. The curl flat defender doesn't sink and he just throws him open. Beautiful ball. For Jordan Love, good performance. That I love that first touchdown throw where I think it was the hook curls. I think it was cover 3, didn't carry, and he just slings it away from the deep middle fielder, low and away from coverage.
Yep,
absolute dart. Protects the receiver. Great ball. I think that the main thing this year is like, yes, Jordan Love is for real. He's been playing through a lot of injuries. There's been some questionable throws, but like he's a damn good quarterback. He was worth the contract.
He has more interceptions than sacks this year. He's the only quarterback that's true for. That's so hard to do. Like, how are you? Yeah. How is that possible? He's played a lot of football.
I feel like we're having a different conversation with Jordan Love. Like he's making us have the conversation of what would you rather have, a quarterback that's throwing an interception a game or someone that's taking 5 sacks a game?
Yeah. It's tough to. Like, it's not that tough to criticize the negative plays because there's been so many bad picks, but at the same time, you have to take the lack of sacks into account. And when you look at that, overall, he's really not taking as many negative plays as you'd expect, and interceptions as well. They can be a bit unlucky. Like a lot of guys throw a bunch of turnover worthy plays and they get dropped, and that hasn't quite happened with Love this year. So I'm still very happy with him. I thought he looked so quick in this game, coming off the groin injury. Like there were several times where I thought for sure he was going to get sacked or just get kind of mucked up in the pocket and have to throw it away or spike it, and he was able to find an escape lane and roll out and make a play on the move. Like I thought his pocket management was pristine in this one.
What did you guys think of that deep ball to Watson where there's the 2 defenders and he kind of just lobs it up there for whoever can make a play on it? And Watson does. And it was in a good spot, but a lot of that had to do with Watson getting there.
I mean, it worked.
I think it's the ultimate trust your receiver throw.
I think it depends on who the safety is. Like, don't try that if Brisker is back there, but Brisker isn't back there. So go ahead and challenge these backups to make plays. I think that with the personnel matchup he had, maybe he knew his odds there, but obviously if he tries that in the playoffs against like Blankenship and Mitchell, like it won't go that way.
Yeah, that's
knowing your odds with Christian Watson is a bit hard though. That's that's the kicker.
It's more like a 30-70 chance that he's going to come up with it instead of a true 50-50 ball. The Bears, they had their lowest pressure rate of the season and their quickest time to throw. The Packers defensive line, it's getting bad when you're counting on Aaron Mosby to be a very impactful edge rusher for them. He had this one rep against Penei Sewell, but Penei Sewell tripped over a lineman, and they're like, oh, this might be the savior for our defensive line this year. But it's weird, just how much Rashawn Gary has regressed. He was so amazing last year that I'm surprised that he's playing so poorly. And this is why I'm actually really high on Jeff Hafley. I feel like Hafley has been calling the defense in a way that it has made up for that lack of pass rush. With all these stunts that they do, Rashawn Gary, this misdirection, like he has been trying his best to manufacture pressure as much as possible, but they can't win off a straight 4-man rush. They just can't.
I feel like the Packers fans right now are the only fan base, maybe in history, that thinks the talent on the field is selling the talent in the coaching staff. Like it's usually the other way around when you go on Twitter. I'm pretty happy with what Hafley has done. It's just there's just too many bad players. And Gary this offseason, he lost like 20 pounds and he lost all of his power. It's like, why you didn't need to lose 20 pounds, man. You were good the way you were. So yeah, it's been disappointing. It's
a position with such tightly skewed like athleticism traits where like, changes like that can completely change your performance. The same thing with corners. Like if a corner puts on 5 pounds of bad weight in the offseason, he might be getting roasted 10 more times the next season. Like there's such a small margin of error when you're dealing with like that level of athlete. And I mean, 20 pounds is a lot of weight.
Rams versus Patriots. We got the future versus the present. Matthew Stafford versus Drake Maye. Stafford 4 touchdowns. He was dealing. Drake Maye, I feel like every week is becoming more and more of a storyline because of what he's able to do with what he has available to him with the Patriots. And yeah, you get those boneheaded interceptions at the end of the games, these last 2 games. But overall, like I have been very, very impressed with Drake, man. I know that we're all Drake Maye guys. How did you feel about this performance?
Yeah, there was a throw that was like, it's an almost throw. Like I'm being if man, if you guys have seen that new meme, the AI Joe Burrow thing. But if he had hit that, my God. Yeah. So it was in the first quarter, he's like heavily pressured. His platform comes out from underneath him. He's stepping forward to try to evade the pressure and he flips it like 45, 50 yards downfield to Booty. And Booty is almost able to make the adjustment. It was great coverage, but the ball was there. And like the defender kind of had like his left arm and he wasn't really able to make a real play on the ball. But if he had been, that throw would be everywhere right now. Like it was incredible. But yeah, a lot of underneath stuff for Maye this week. He had a really low ADOT. It was like 5.7 this week. Typically it's higher. But he was working it underneath. He was accurate. Obviously, there was that interception he threw. Not sure if that was a miscommunication. It looked like the receiver. He may have been expecting the receiver to stop, but he kept running or look for the ball and settle into the soft spot, and he didn't. But yeah, I think it was a pretty good game from him. Yeah, I liked the performance. He actually had a positive EPA under pressure this week, which is hard to do. And it was barely positive. It was like in the tenths. But still, I think that showed on the film his ability to stand in there. He got crunched as he threw a few times and still had plenty of zip on the ball and was able to deliver it accurately. Threw the pick at the end, and that sucked. So, but overall, there's a lot to be excited about with Maye. He kind of is on that baby Josh Allen arc so far that we're kind of hoping for. Baby Justin Herbert, baby Josh Allen. He'll become one of them. Yeah.
The Rams improved to 5-5, and that is important because the Seahawks and Niners NFC West game, the Seahawks ended up shocking the Niners and beating them. The first time Geno Smith has beat them. Congratulations to Geno Smith right there. The 49ers are now 5-5, and I feel like there are 2 tales to talk about with this game. The conversation I'm most interested in having is the one with the 49ers offense, because this is just me. This is how I feel. You know, I think Brock Purdy is a good quarterback. I feel like whenever he doesn't execute in moments, it is always blamed on something else. It is Kyle Shanahan is terrible at adjusting. He's like not good. It's Deebo Samuel. Why is he the one that's the first read on the play? It should be Jawan Jennings. And it's like Brock Purdy clearly throws an inaccurate throw that's high. And they're like, oh, but, you know, Deebo, like, that shouldn't be the read anyway. And it's like, I mean, does this guy get criticized for anything, like, amongst 49ers Nation? Is like nothing his fault. And this is not trying to down talk Brock Purdy, but I do feel like a conversation needs to be had in defense of Kyle Shanahan and how he's able to maximize his quarterbacks. And then when they start underperforming relative to expectations, the blame is pinned on Shanahan, but not the quarterback that he maximized. I don't know. How do you feel about it, Theo? I can start with you.
I think it's funny, like, how many 49ers fans legitimately think, like, Kyle Shanahan is on the hot seat. Like, I feel like I see that. I'll go into, like, their threads or, like, under their, they announced the final score and they lost, and you, like, just take a scroll through the comments and they're like, this is the game that does it for Kyle Shanahan. It's like, what are you guys talking about? What are you guys talking about? Yeah, I think this was one where the run game didn't really get going, and I think that the Seahawks have a lot to be proud of. This Mike Macdonald tenure has been off to a horrific start. I mean, players retiring in the middle of the season, people not knowing how to communicate, like, until this week, like, just getting lined up right was a struggle for them. The slightest whiff of play action would just send them in random directions. So that for them to actually pull it together this week and have the front seven kind of live up to the talent that's on that unit, I thought was a big step for them. Witherspoon had an amazing performance. His PBU, where he punched up and under
that. Then McCaffrey,
and the goal was to punch it up in the air to create that havoc. That was so deliberate to create that lift on the ball that ended up getting picked. So I think to some extent that the Seahawks took this one more than the 49ers or Brock Purdy, like, gave it away. But I do think that Brock Purdy's, like, accuracy gets severely overstated, especially this year. And watch any Tom Brady broadcast and you'll see he'll give out at least 10 C+ throws to Brock Purdy on those broadcasts, which he always loves giving the letter grades. And I just feel like with a lot of Purdy throws this year, they've been, like, just a bit behind, or, like, just a bit below where they need to be, or just a bit high, like maybe kind of catchable, but not right, in that perfect location to maximize a yak like we were talking about earlier. And I think that he scrambles a lot, but he's running to run a lot. Like, he's not scrambling and hitting big throws downfield as much as he's scrambling. He's scrambling and he's picked up some clutch plays, like, with his legs. He's definitely come through for them in some big moments in that way, but he's just not that level of athlete where he, like, can really move and, like, tear your heart out, which the best ones can do. And there just hasn't been a lot of that from Purdy this year. And so, yeah, just not a lot of running room for McCaffrey, not Purdy's best performance, certainly. And then the Seahawks, they do have some playmakers. I was impressed with Witherspoon. I was impressed with Byron Murphy this second.
Yeah, I think some of the issues with Purdy scrambling so much too is, even though he's accurate as a scrambler, because of his limited arm talent, a lot of the field shrinks, like, big time as he's scrambling. And so if he's, like, voluntarily scrambling, he's voluntarily minimized or shrinking the field and giving himself less space to work with. And that's become a problem much more so this season with less talent. I think Jennings is really good, man. Like, he's good. Like, he's not just, like, a fill-in guy. Like, he's got this awkward wiggle in his gait, like, the way he runs, and it's hard to read his, like, cuts. Like, the way I watch him sometimes, like, not to give a Justin Jefferson comparison at all, because obviously there's a huge gap there, but Justin Jefferson gets open with this awkward wiggle, this awkward gait where you just can't read his motions, and, like, to a much less extent, Jennings has that too, and he just kind of, like, he's slippery. He wiggles around people to get open, coming back to the ball, and wins at the catch point often, like, frequently winning at the catch point. Purdy, underwhelming, lots of underneath stuff. There was, like you mentioned, Joel, that dig to Debo. It's second and long, games there to be had, and you're airmailing a route that Debo's winning. He's winning inside on the dig. He's got about a yard of separation, and it's thrown completely uncatchably over his head. And, like, that's a problem. There's been too much of that this year. We're seeing some of that regression because he's got less support around him. He's still a good quarterback. He's proven that, but some of those shortcomings have been much more apparent lately and much more often.
It's like the margin for error has lessened. And, when Chris Sims put this perfectly, and I want to give him credit because this is where I heard it from. It's last year, if Brock Purdy misses a throw, it doesn't really matter because the next play, it'll be like a 25-yard chunk gain, and people just forget about it. But this year, the margin for error has been much more smaller to where those plays really stick out. And, I was looking at the comments of the 2nd and 11 throw where he airmailed it to Debo. And there's people that are like, no, that play was intentional from Purdy. He was trying to avoid the lineman batting it down, so he threw it higher. And I'm like, yeah, but like, if he threw it to the window to the right of him, it probably just goes straight line and Debo catches it. So, no, there's a lot of excuse making for him. I don't think he's the biggest problem in just with the team. I think special teams has been the biggest problem with the Niners. It's lost them so many games. But, it's just the margin for error is much smaller this year, and it's costing them games, and that's the reason why they're 5-5.
Yeah, Purdy is actually averaging more yards per throw from the pocket than anybody else this year. So like when he's standing in there and like still ripping these digs or ripping it to Juwan, like that, they're still like the best in the league in those situations, which I find interesting. The problem with the offense is when he's out of the pocket. If he's in the 100th percentile yards per attempt from the pocket, he's in the 36th percentile yards per pass out of the pocket. And he's doing it so much. And like you said, Jackson, he's shrinking the field every time he scrambles. Yeah. He doesn't have that arm talent. So like you think like, oh, he's been so good out of structure this year. He's been such a great creator, not throwing it. And he's doing it so much. So yeah, just a little stat to chew on.
That's why the meta nowadays is these big arm quarterbacks, because that gap, the defensive line is much more athletic nowadays than the offensive line as a whole. So the quarterback's scrambling a lot more. And if you've got a big arm, you can still make a lot of those throws on the run. And Purdy's is more limited than like the Herberts, the Mahomes, the Josh Allens, etc.
Yeah. You can go, Jackson. Go.
I didn't want to move off Seattle before I mentioned Kenneth Walker, who, despite averaging 3.9 yards per carry, number one RBIS score this week. Theo, if you're not familiar with RBIS, it's a metric that's based on forced missed tackles, yards after contact, and then stabilized by yards before contact. So it's basically just trying to judge what a running back creates by themselves.
If Ken Walker is high in it, then I rock.
Yeah. Number one this week, 4.3 yards after contact, 0.57 missed tackles forced per attempt. He had a negative yards before contact number. So he's getting hit behind the line of scrimmage on average, forcing a missed tackle more often than every other carry, 57% of the carries, and 4.3 yards after contact. So
sounds on brand.
Stud
for the Seahawks right now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Man, that right side of the O-line is so bad.
I just wanted to touch on a little bit the Seahawks and Geno Smith. Honestly, it's really just Geno Smith. The amount of throws that he made in this game under pressure, on the move, the game-winning drive where he got those two scrambles, the one with the touchdown. I just feel like Geno Smith is such an underappreciated quarterback because of the situation that he's playing in. But the bright spot is that I really thought Abraham Lucas made a big difference in the lineup this week at right tackle. Those reps against Nick Bosa were solid. And then their new center, who started because Connor Williams decided to retire out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like, if this offensive line is anywhere near serviceable, and it was against the Niners defensive line, which they haven't been elite this year, but they're still a respectable unit. Like, I think the Seahawks have a chance to maybe go on a little bit of a run here if the offensive line can carry some of the weight and not be the worst unit in the league.
Yeah, I mean, they're far from out of it, 5-5 in a really tight division, but they need to provide more relief for the offensive line is my thing. Like they're going to fail if you drop straight back with no play action 50 times in the play. Like they just do not have the talent, I think. Like even Charles Cross in this game got ragdolled a couple times, and I think he still really struggles with some speed to power as kind of a smaller tackle. But I think the key for them will be, can they alleviate the stress on it? Can they get better chip help? Can they go under center more and run the ball and then run play action off of that? They have so many tells right now because when they get under center, it's never to play action, it's never to pass, it's just to run. So I think there's some things they can do to help the lack of talent on that unit going forward, because it's insanity what Ryan Grubb. I like the idea. Ideally, that's like how I'd like to play offense, is like drop back and like slice people up with DK and JSN, who's been crazy recently, and
Go 15, 20 yards down the field. Gino will find you.
Yeah, like it's a great idea. It's just like the offensive line is selling them right now. So it's like you got to do something a little bit different. But
now, Jackson, I think you're going to be really excited to talk about this. Falcons and Broncos. Broncos won 38-6. And you tweeted something that made some headlines, buddy. You didn't call Bo Nix the next John Elway. No.
Yeah. So let me just preface by saying, like, he's been good. He's been better than I expected him to be. He's been playing within the system. He's been a good system fit. However, when you start to look at him beyond the system stats, so what he's doing within the system, and you look a little bit outside that, things get a little bit murkier. And here's some of that. So 21st in PFF passing grade, minimum 100 snaps for quarterbacks, 5th highest time to throw. That's higher than Justin Fields and Caleb Williams. Despite this long time to throw, he's got the 9th lowest drop back to pressure rate at 29.8%. So he's getting a long time to throw, and he's getting pressured at a very low rate, despite the fact he's got the 5th highest time to throw in the league. The other four quarterbacks with longer time to throws out of 39 qualifying quarterbacks are Jalen Hurts, who's ranked 37th in drop back to pressure rate. Lamar Jackson, who's ranked 19th in drop back to pressure rate. Brock Purdy, who's ranked 32nd in drop back to pressure rate, and Sam Darnold, who's ranked 26th in drop back to pressure rate. So all these other guys are getting who are holding the ball are getting pressured at a high rate, whereas Bo Nix is getting we're not seeing anyone else hold the ball at his rate and not get pressured on it. Despite all that time, he's 20th in ADOT. He's getting clean pockets. He's not really driving the ball. Sometimes he is, and he's made some good throws driving the ball. I'm not taking that from him. I'm looking at this from a high level here. And on the rare snaps where he is pressured, he's ranked 34 of 35 in PFF passing grade at a 29.6. The only other quarterback ranked below him, Will Levis. And on 123 snaps where he's been pressured, he has one big time throw. So anything out of the scheme, you start to see this big decline. And he's running the scheme well. But the reason that I felt the need to go into this is not to knock his play, because it's still been good. But I feel like he had a 4.0 ADOT this past week, and people are marveling at this game. This is his best game of the season, 300 something yards, 4 touchdowns. It's a good game. 4 yards average depth of target. This was a schemed up game through and through. If that doesn't scream scheme to you, then you don't know what you're looking at. And he's had much better games than this. He's had some games where he's been on the money downfield, and to see this game lauded as his best game, that it was just a little triggering, knowing what's actually going on the field. So that's my rant there. Theo, what do you have to say?
I mean, I agree with some of the Bo Nix overhype agenda. I mean, 2 weeks ago, I made kind of a scathing video on him where I was like, he's second in offensive rookie of the year odds right now behind Jayden. That's ridiculous. He has not even been a good quarterback this year. He's been bottom 5 by every metric I can find. And then since I made that video, of course, he comes out and then almost beats the Chiefs and then has this game. So bad timing. I still think that's true though. I just do not think that you can tell me that he's been playing better ball than Jayden Daniels overall this year or Brock Bowers. No world can you convince me that Bo Nix's season has been better than Brock Bowers at their respective positions, especially coming off the week that Brock Bowers just had. Yeah. So I'm with you with the Bo Nix is a little overhyped train. But I will say this about this game in particular. He actually was ripping it over the middle in the deep and intermediate middle areas, which he has not really done much of. And I did like to see that. And I couldn't really think of any other games I'd seen from him where that's the case. Like the Buccaneers game was one where he played well and they won that game and they put up a lot of points. But I thought like everything was kind of taking those one-on-ones kind of to the boundary. It really wasn't trying to throw into the teeth of the defense in that intermediate middle area. And then against the Chiefs, kind of the same deal. Like he was on the money on that go ball to Cortland Sutton. Like overall was pretty accurate and kept everything on schedule. But a lot of it was outside the numbers and kind of that area defenses will give you. This game against the Falcons, like that crossing route against the quarter half where I don't know what the Falcons defense was doing. They did not get hands on this bender. The mic did not drop at all. And then Bo Nix beat Bates to the spot with the throw. Like that was a nice throw in that intermediate middle area. And that's like the kind of throw that I think has been missing for him. So, and that combined with the efficiency, I think it's fine to call it his best game. But the ADOT is tough to ignore. The fact that it's the Falcons defense and they have major problems, which we'll talk about, is tough to ignore. But Nix, perhaps I've been hard on Nix because when I looked at his numbers, like so many of his really bad stats come from the first month of the season. After week 5, there really haven't been any like kind of disastrous performances. Like I was giving him a hard time because of all of his failed completions that are, obviously completed passes, but they don't pick up the necessary yardage to constitute a successful play. So if it's 2nd and 8, maybe it's a 1-yard pass that makes it 2nd and 7. That's a failed completion. Yep. He had 16 of those week 1. I kind of later realized, which were kind of skewing those numbers. And that's why he's kind of an outlier at the top. So I do think that I've been maybe a bit harsh on Bo Nix. And he had growing pains like you can expect from any rookie the first month, and it's been pretty much fine since then. But still, he's not rookie of the year, and he has not been better than Jayden, and he has not been better than Brock Bowers, and he hasn't been better than Zach Frazier. If we're really going positionless offensive rookie of the year, like it should be.
I think that what's surprised me the most about him is I think his arm is better than I anticipated. He's got a little more juice in it. He had I think it was 3 weeks ago, it was incomplete, but he had a 65 yards in air throw. I didn't think he had that in him. So, yeah. Yeah,
after the combine, I was really like the noodle arm allegations.
Yeah.
I just feel like when a quarterback has this type of performance, I mean, instantly it's labeled as like historic. You have the obscure stats that come out. Like he completed 80% of his passes, 300 yards, 4 touchdowns. Like no quarterback has done that in history. And then people start coming to you like, oh, he just made history. Like, how can you ignore this? And, it's like, well, 2 of the touchdowns were screens where the Falcons are just playing soft. And I mean, they got demolished by the Broncos offensive line. One of them was a schemed up touchdown to the tight end. And then the little Jordan Humphrey play was really good, rolling out and being accurate on the move there. Like, it's just, he had a 96 percentile EPA per play game. He had a 3rd percentile ADOT game. So when you talk about scheme, like it's often in a negative light. That's how people take it. But I mean, the reality of the situation is that the Broncos offensive line is arguably the best pass blocking offensive line in the NFL right now. And they create a very high floor. Like even though the household names aren't there outside of Cortland Sutton for the Broncos offense, I think many people only look at the names and they don't just say, are they getting open? Because that's really what matters. Like regardless of what the name on the back of your jersey is, are you getting open in the offense? And for the Broncos offense, the last couple of weeks, they have been getting open and Bo Nix has been playing on schedule and on time. And I think another layer of this is that people have just forgotten, how great Sean Payton is as a play caller. Yeah. I was looking back to his Saints last year with the Saints in 2021. Jameis Winston was 5-1 as a starter. He had a 102 passer rating in those starts. And the leading receivers were Deontay Hardy, Marquez Callaway, Adam Troutman, Alvin Kamara, and then little Jordan Humphrey. 2 of those players are on the Broncos right now. Like the receiving core for that Saints team with Jameis putting up these great numbers, it's honestly worse than what the Broncos have right now. And we're kind of just realizing that, listen, Sean Payton really knows how to call an offense. Like, that's who Sean Payton
He does. Yeah, he's still relevant. There were some questions, but he's back and he's cooking right now.
But I do agree with like your take, Theo, about your offensive rookie of the year, because listen, I think if people want to make the conversation, Bo Nix is trending towards maybe like winning it. I can understand that because there's a lot of season left. But as of right now, like Jayden Daniels is top 10 in QBR, top 10 in passer rating. He has a higher completion percentage, more yards than Bo Nix. Bo Nix only has him beat in total touchdowns. That's about it. But when
it's a box score award.
Yeah, when you look at EPA per play, when you look at success rate, Bo Nix is 24th. He's 26th in success rate. And Jayden is leading a top 5 offense in the NFL. Bo Nix is on the 20th ranked offense. Like, it to me is not a competition. Like, it's Jayden. He's played at a top 10 quarterback level this year. Bo Nix is more like in the 20s, and then Brock Bowers has been a top 3 tight end in the NFL this year. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah, Bauer. I can't say enough about Bauer. We'll get into Bauer.
Yeah. Before we switch games here, I just want to. Atlanta's got a serious offensive line problem. And it reminds me so much of like 2 years ago, those Viking teams where they were pretty solid-ish all around, but they had this massive offensive line problem where if they faced any high-level edge rusher, the game plan was just slam shut. I mean, Kirk would get sacked 6-7 times any given game against a good defensive line. And that's how it feels right now. So Kirk is kind of the inverse of the Bo Nix whole pressure thing I was just giving you guys, where Kirk Cousins is ranked 20th in drop back to pressure rate, which is bad at 34.2%, but he's also the 5th highest time to throw, or lowest, time to throw quarterback in the league at 2.55 seconds. He's getting the ball out quick, and he's in like the bottom 12 starting quarterbacks in terms of pressure rate per drop back.
And their defense sucks really bad. So they get, and Kirk Cousins is also extremely immobile, and even less so now than he was a couple years ago. So like you're getting all these sacks, all these quarterback hits, and when the left tackle loses, Kirk Cousins has a split second to get the ball out because he's not scrambling. It's kind of play over at that point, and he's not doing the Anthony Richardson where he's taking this massive hit and throwing it eight yards downfield.
Bro, he's not even stepping up in the pocket either.
Yeah.
Like there can be pressure around the edge, and like Cousins can't do the bare minimum of like loading that back foot and like getting up. Like if it's not good, like he's going down.
He's like a 7-on-7 all-star right now at this point in his career. Like you take the pads away and give him a clean pocket and he's still ripping it. But
he's just a rail gun on like a ship that just like turns like this, like a turret.
Yeah, and it'll still work if everything else functions. But you need everything else to work for it to play at a high level. And Penix came in and was throwing darts, by the way. It was only a few plays, but yeah.
Oh, I didn't see his performance.
You should watch it. It was fun.
I'll check it out.
Slinging it. Yeah.
There was maybe like 5 pass attempts until they just started running the ball, like HB dive.
Yeah, but he was pushing it. Yeah,
he was. No, I
let me be a box score watcher and look at the passing.
Oh well,
chart
one of
here.
them wasn't caught. It was downfield. It was. People might have been able to catch it. Yeah, I think it hit him in the hands. Yeah, I was watching it live. I didn't watch his A22, but off live, I think he could have caught it.
I see it was to Casey Washington. I didn't like him in the preseason, so
yeah.
What was the yardage for Michael Penix?
Total in this game?
Yeah,
he had 24 yards.
Yeah.
It was all right. Raiders and
0.24 EPA per dropback.
That's really efficient. Raiders and Dolphins. Speaking about Brock Bowers, I mean, he was absolutely fantastic in this game. 126 yards, 1 touchdown, 13 receptions. I love the way they use him. I mean, he lines up as a tight end, and then he's in the backfield, and then sometimes they motion him out wide. I think the best thing about Brock Bowers, there's so many great things, but I just think his awareness understanding leverage of defenders, sitting in zones. He's very quarterback friendly as a rookie. And then you have all the physical traits that stand out, like his ability to break tackles. Theo, you love Brock Bowers. What did you see from him in this game?
I actually don't love the way that they use him because I don't think he should be blocking one snap. Like, I seriously do not think that he should play in line at all. Like, I think he should be out wide, running a route on every single play because he just does everything at such a high level. The route salesmanship at the top of the route before he breaks is always awesome to watch. The amount of head fakes and like shoulder shimmies that he uses to throw off like hook defenders and get them with their weight on the wrong foot is awesome. His hand-eye coordination is like Justin Jefferson-esque. His ability to make catches like behind his eye line after the ball is like crossed his head. He can make a catch behind him, one-handed, low. While doing it, he's like turning up field. I mean, the guy is just, as a yak threat, he can stop on a dime. He can run through your face. Like, the guy is one of the perfect receivers in the league. Like, I really do not have a bad word to say about him. He's top 10 in receiving yards this year. He's a rookie tight end. That is
with no quarterback.
With no quarterback. That is unheard of. Like, that blows my mind. He's 10th in receiving yards. The next tight end is George Kittle at 26. Then it's Trey McBride at 28. Trey McBride is a sick player with Kyler Murray. Maybe he missed some games now that I'm thinking about it, but still, it is just unreal what Brock Bowers is accomplishing. If the offensive rookie of the year was held right now, and I had a vote, which I don't, I'd vote for Bowers over Jayden Daniels. Like, I really would. I think that what Bowers is doing is just completely bananas.
Yeah, I think that Bowers really saved the Raiders draft because it was about to be tainted by this late season win streak that got them a unqualified head coach and played them out of a massive like quarterback draft where there's endless quarterback prospects that you could have talked yourself into taking, and any which of them of like Penix, Maye, Caleb, JJ, take your pick. Any of them, Jayden, obviously, like they could have played their way into that realm, but instead, like late season win streak plays them out of it, and you're at like 13, I think, and like to save the day, you need a home run, and they hit that with Bowers, who is like the value of a top 5 pick at this point, and now it's like you didn't fuck that whole thing up. Now you just got to figure out how to get rid of your head coach.
Is he a top 3 tight end in football already?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the 3 would be who? Are we knocking Kelsey out of here?
I don't know. I think Kelsey. I think it's Kelsey, Kittle, and Bowers still. Who am I forgetting? I might be forgetting. McBride is pretty good.
I think he's in there.
Good.
Jackson has a hot take that McBride's the best tight end in the NFL.
Ooh.
I think Bowers is closing that, but I think they're 1 and 2 right now. I think just their movement and their athleticism and just the matchup nightmare they present to a linebacker or a DB or anyone is just so astronomically greater than any other tight end. I mean, the only guy that I can think of is like Laporta, but Laporta's kind of like had this weird year of minimal production and this massively explosive offense after last year just looking phenomenal as an athlete in space. I'm not totally sure why that's fallen to the point that it has. I get they have a lot of playmakers, but like there's a lot of games where he's got like 1 or 2 catches, and yeah, but it's because of that, I mean, I think he's a tier below, but I think the 3rd spot's up in the air.
Yeah, he might be better than Kelsey at this point. But the thing about Bowers is like I don't think he's a very strong blocker like McBride is. Like I almost think like Bowers could be in the like top 10 receiver conversation, honestly. And if you think about him like a tight end, there is kind of a glaring flaw that none of the other like big names you have, you would say. So it's a bit tough to rank a guy like him because kind of the same thing as like Jimmy Graham back in the day. It's like, what even is he or what should he be?
Yeah, that's a great point. And they try to emphasize Michael Mayer, like taking all those responsibilities and just have Bowers leaking out so he can get those receptions. the Dolphins takeaways I had for them, I thought Tua, this year, I feel like since he's come back, it's been better out of structure. He's been creating more plays, and the playmaking ability has been there. He was awesome in this game. They're 4-6 right now. Can they make the playoffs? This is their remaining schedule. The Patriots, Packers, Jets, Texans, Niners, Browns, Jets.
They can do it. They can. They're capable of it. I mean, they need the Broncos to fall off some, but I'm not totally writing off the Dolphins yet, but the weather is getting colder, and this has been typically the time that they've struggled. It's just maybe they can reverse the trend. Like maybe they can play their best football when it matters, because I do think that they're getting better and better here. They're better now than they were in September they're better now than they were in that Bills game when Tua got his concussion, right? So I do think that they might be building towards something, but at the same time, I don't know. Nothing would really surprise me about this team collapsing at this time of year either.
No.
So there's two things that has me encouraged about them. And that's, for one, that Tua has the lowest drop back to pressure rate in the NFL at 20.9%. I did not see that one coming. Did not have that on my bingo card. Jonnu Smith looked phenomenal this week. The long touchdown was a major busted play, but he looked really good. And Jonnu Smith was a guy who a few years ago we talked about as like this insane athlete who's just like gonna break out. It never happened. He went to the Patriots as like the tight end 2. Their whole shit that was going on there kind of just I think blocked that off. I mean, I never really thought he was this like brimming stud, but the Dolphins haven't had like a high level tight end for a while. Like Gesicki was like kind of making plays sometimes, but like if he can, I'm not saying that Jonnu's like a high level tight end, but if he can just be reliable, that adds like a physical, athletic tight end in space who can beat linebackers. And when you've got like Tyreek or Waddle like always being like bracketed in some way or another, that is a really valuable position in this offense. And Achane also looked really good, and he's stayed healthy, which has been a big key for him. He looked really good this past week. Like 4 yards after contact for a little guy like that is crazy. But as a receiver, he's got juice. As a check down option who can make a linebacker miss in space, like they have more than they had before. And I was not confident in them when Tua first came back in making a run, but now that we're like a few games into it, I'm a lot more positive on that outlook.
Yeah, because you look at the games, like Patriots, you face the Jets twice. That's 3 wins. The Browns, could be a win too. And then the 49ers are not this unbeatable team that they were last year. And then the Texans, up until the very end where they ran away with the score, they were in a close game with the Cowboys on Monday Night Football. So this schedule coming into the season looked very difficult. It looked like a gauntlet. But now that we sit here 11 weeks through the year, we're like, okay, this isn't that bad. And they just need a couple things to go their way to make a run at the playoffs.
Yeah, and their defense hasn't collapsed either, even though their edge rusher Phillips went down and Chubb hasn't been playing. Like, they still got Sealer, Calais Campbell's playing at a high level. Chop Robinson has been coming on recently. Like, I like what Weaver has done, the defensive coordinator, like bringing some of that Baltimore mentality to the team. Like some of the crazy blitz packages have worked for them. They are... Where are they in a couple key metrics here? They're in the 52nd percentile early down success rate on defense. They're creating negative plays in the 58th percentile. They're limiting explosive plays in the 58th percentile. So that tells the story to me of a defense that is like comfortably like 15th or 14th or something like that in the league, which I'd be happy with if I was a Dolphins fan. Going into it right now, like last year, the lack of edge rush when those two went down just completely killed them in the playoffs. Like Mahomes just had all day. Like this year, there might be a little bit of something there. And then there's just so much to get excited about on this offense. I feel like you said, Achane is such a good runner between the tackles. It almost feels more real this year. Like last year, their stats were just astronomically good. But it would be like sometimes he would have 10 yards a carry, and then in other games he'd have 2. Like I just feel like they have kind of more consistent answers this year as opposed to like, oh, McDaniel is going to scheme something up against the Broncos and, you know, collapse against a good team. Like they gave the Bills a run for their money.
Whenever Tua's played, he's been really good.
Yeah, and Tua's been really good since coming back from the concussion. I mean, Tua even being out there still really concerns me because I just feel like he's getting these concussions kind of easier and easier. But
the way he dove after the interception to make the tackle last week.
He's not doing the best job protecting himself either.
He's I don't know what that thought was there. Like
I don't know. That's what scares me the most. But I do think that this Dolphins team is dangerous.
Yeah.
Colts and Jets. The Colts beat the Jets 28-27. Winning percentage as Jets starting quarterback, Zach Wilson 36%, Sam Darnold 34%, Aaron Rodgers 27%. Didn't see that coming, but this is where the Jets are now. I've given up on a season. I was actively hate watching the Jets this weekend because I do a pick 'em with my co-host from Pick a Side, and we're like in such a tight race. And I picked against the Jets because I knew the Colts, you know, quarterback getting benched, starting again. I just knew this was going to be a Richardson masterclass. But, man, am I happy that it actually was. I think this is the best game he's had as a pro. Like, he looked natural, and this was easily the most accurate that we've ever seen him. Like, it was very encouraging for the Colts' outlook. If Richardson can play like this, like, they really have something here. And all the high-end tools that you were sold on pre-draft, like, this is exactly what you saw. You saw it materialize in this game, and you made an excellent video on it, Theo. Richardson, how did he look to you?
He looked great. He looked fantastic. I couldn't have been happier with what I saw. Like the fact that he can hold it for that extra beat and allow guys to get open is so crucial. That throw where he got hit to Downs was so insane to me. He hit the top of his drop back, and Downs is just like kind of getting out into his choice route. He takes a hitch and climbs the pocket. Downs breaks inside, but he's going to bend it back out, so Richardson can't throw it. He takes another hitch forward, waiting for this Downs route to finally develop. It's like a Senior Bowl route that Downs is running on air for like 5 seconds. He's like hitching and hitching and hitching, waiting for it to break. He gets hit by Clemens. Finally, Downs turns it outside, and as he's like going to the ground, he throws it like an outbreaking route, like perfectly on the money. How many guys can do that? Yeah. I will say this about the game, though. I thought the Jets had the most garbage game plan on defense. I thought it was so horrible what like they allowed Richardson to do for them. Like
that Alec Pierce go ball, the way that Sauce Gardner and the safety, like they had no idea if it was cover 2 or quarters. They legit, neither of them had any clue.
Oh, totally. No, like the safety was stuck in the mud and then popped out. But just in general, like, with the Jets, since Saleh has been fired, they've played so much man coverage. That wasn't Saleh's way. Saleh hardly ever played man coverage, and the defense was fantastic the entire time he was there. Now he gets fired, and it happened right away after he got fired. They played the Bills. They played man coverage the entire game against the Bills. Guess what happens? You get a guy like Josh Allen and all the corners' backs are turned. Like, he's going to go make plays. He's going to hold the ball, and eventually guys are going to run away from people, and he's going to tear you apart. And that's what happened. And then in this game, like the linebackers are blitzing or stepping down to spy Richardson. There's just no help in the middle of the field. And Richardson was just able to rip wide open digs all day with the linebackers just caught in no man's land. Like against a quarterback like this, like play more zone, get eyes on this guy, make him dice you up in a tight window. Make them layer throws over you and back and down in front of the safety. None of that was required from Richardson in this game. Like, you couldn't have given him a better get right performance just based on the game plan of the Jets there. And it just goes to show, like, the Saleh firing was completely, I think, premature. I mean, who are they going to promote that's better? Like, how is the defense the problem here? Like, how is he the issue with the culture instead of Aaron Rodgers? Like, or the GM who's made all these fireable offense moves? The defense falling off the way it has from just a game planning, like basic stuff level is supremely disappointing. So all the flowers to Richardson. I thought he played a great game, but the Jets really made it easy for him to bounce back.
And I got a question for you guys before you go, Jackson. I feel like the Jets are in a dilemma here because Aaron Rodgers has like a huge dead cap hit. He's older and he hasn't played the best this year, but I don't think he's been terrible. I think there have been some bright spots. Do you feel like the best pathway forward for the Jets is to just approach this offseason wanting Aaron to come back, but just finding a head coach to coach this team? Because like maybe I'm being optimistic, but I feel like if Robert Saleh was still on the Jets, we would be like 5-5 instead of 3-8 right now.
I think it's like the sunk cost fallacy, right? Where like you've traded a lot for Aaron Rodgers. You've traded a lot for Devontae Adams to unite this quarterback with this former receiver. And now it's like, okay, do you just mail it in and just eat all of the value that you've thrown away, or do you double down for another season? And honestly, like, this might surprise you, Joel, but Aaron Rodgers is top 5 in lowest pressure drop back to pressure rate in the NFL. So he's getting clean pockets.
I was well aware. That's what makes it so much worse.
The receivers are there. The defensive talent is there. And like, he's still slinging it. He's not prime Aaron Rodgers, but he's still a good quarterback, I think. And he's had some really high level throws. Like, I think that you try to chase him down again because you kind of have to. Like, you don't want to just eat this value right now, especially right after trading for Devontae Adams when you're like 3 and what were you? What was it? 3-6, 2-6, 2-5, something like that.
Yeah, no, something like that.
Yeah, so I think you kind of have put yourselves, the Jets have put themselves in a position where they like you don't want to eat that value. So
yeah, because it just makes no for me. Like, obviously, I'd want to draft a quarterback high, but I've just seen rookie quarterbacks come in and play and then, not be that good for us. So it's like, do you want to fall back into that cycle or just bring back Aaron, draft a quarterback, and then just maybe see if something works out?
It's not the year to draft a quarterback at like 10 either. Like, unless like Cam Ward or I guess Shador's there. Like, I don't know, Drew Aller, like, or Alar. I don't know who else
this
is
going to. This is like the Suns firing Frank Vogel and then getting Mike Budenholzer. Change their philosophy this year. But Jackson, go ahead. What did you think about the Colts-Jets game?
Yeah, I think that what was really interesting about Anthony Richardson was, I agree, his best performance of his career so far, short career, but still the best. He only had one big time throw. He's had a lot of games where he's had like 4 or 5. Like, this is tied for his second lowest game of the season. I mean, he was so accurate in the face of pressure. He had a throw in the first quarter where either the guard or the center just got blown back, and he threw off his back foot to hit this 15-yard crosser perfect over the middle. And I was like, "Woo, is this going to be a game where he's like, yeah, you never should have fucking benched me?" And that's what it ended up being. And his ADOT stayed really high. It was 12.7, which was like kind of a criticism before, but when he's accurate, it's not a criticism. And if like they're getting like guys are running open at like that crazy ADOT that he's been throwing at. So why would you stop? Like, sometimes, yes, you need to work a check down option in when they weren't doing that all the time earlier. But like, it's fine to be a vertical, like Bruce Arians style offense where you're reading like deep to short. And he does it well when it's hitting. And if he can keep even a fraction of this, like if he can like get somewhere in between where he was and then where he was this past week, like in the middle, like that's a good quarterback. He leads the league in drop rate at 11.2%. Another 3 drops came this week. Like, that's something that just was thrown out the window. He got benched after a performance where his receivers just did not help him at all. There was definitely games before that could have justified a benching a lot more than the last one. But yeah, the Jets defense has just lost. Assignments were blown left and right. Even if it wasn't like chunk gains, like there was like 8 to 12-yard throws where there's just the coverage is just not knowing who's taking who. And there's this weird vacancy of space with defenders like not picking up the route. And it's way too often. It's been going on for weeks. So yeah.
The Colts are 5-6, and their remaining games are the Lions. I think that's a loss. But then they face the Patriots, the Broncos, the Titans, the Giants, and the Jaguars.
They face the Broncos. They control their own destiny. I mean, basically.
Yeah,
Yep.
if they beat them, they can make the playoffs, and that's going to be a really good game. The Colts defense has been surprisingly good this year. Like it's been way better than how it started, where Joe Mixon like goes for 200 yards rushing. Like they haven't been that defense. They've been so much better. These last two takeaways: Vikings, Titans, Saints, Browns. Do you guys have any takeaways from these games? You being a Vikings fan, Jackson.
I mean, Darnold had a nice bounce back game. He had been reeling, like absolutely reeling for weeks. It was good to see Cam Robinson after a shaky second game kind of get back on track a little bit. Still had some ups and downs, but for the most part, he was fine. The defense is leaky. They're pretty good, and then they just allow these big explosives. I thought Levis actually played pretty well this week. Like he had like this big touchdown that was called back for I think it was like a illegal shift or something like that. But it was to Ridley. He had some nice downfield throws. Some of the bad still, but I thought it was one of his better games. And then Saints and Browns, standard Jameis game. Same number of big time throws as turnover worthy plays. Big A-dot. Jerry Jeudy looks good. Did he just need Jameis? Maybe. He's winning routes. That 89-yard touchdown, he like completely just snatched inside leverage. And like I posted a photo of it where the defender is just completely lost and facing the wrong way, and he's breaking inside. Like he looks good right now, dare I say. Like he's always been a good route runner, but like he's winning and he's catching the balls that are being thrown. Yeah, so yeah, that's really all I've got for those games.
I wish I knew that before I started Cedric Tillman. I thought he was on a heater. They really had a terrible performance for me. Theo, any takeaways from these games?
Not one.
I respect it. I was like,
I have not watched those at all yet. So.
As I was going down these games, I'm like, Colts and Jets is probably where we're going to end at. No need to talk about Vikings, Titans, Browns, Saints. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Weekly Blitz. We want to thank Theo for joining us on the show. Now, Theo, tell the people where they can find you.
Yes, of course. You can find me giving breakdowns on TikTok at Theo Ash NFL. I also do some more statistical content at PFN 365 on TikTok. And then you can find me on Blue Sky these days a lot on Theo. I think my handle is just Theo Ash on there. Still tweeting at Theo Ash NFL as well. Got the Stay Hot podcast with Matt and Bladen. And that's, if you can remember all that, that's where you can find me.
Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you guys next time.